But my beats, they are hard.
Another edition of the BCSN Sports Wrap. Brian Fulford here with my partner in the backcourt. Let's just see, I'm using basketball terms now because we're moving in that direction. That's my man, AD Drew. AD, what's good with you, my brother?
Nothing much, my brother. Appreciate the assist on that, Brian. You know, if I was running down the court, I'd be pointing at you like a great pass right there.
I appreciate that. You know, I'm always looking to throw good, solid, fundamental passes. You know, no one-handed passes, no one-hand jump passes. Bounce pass. Solid with a little heat, little strength on it, so that way it gets to you. Well, this is our week number 15 wrap-up show. And primarily, when we say week 15, we're primarily talking the HBCU football season, which has gone through 15 weeks. The college football season nationally is over. Black college football season is over. And we are ready to move into the heralded bowl season. And so a lot of this show will be, we'll get into obviously talking about the SWAC championship game, which took place this past weekend. Shout out to the Alcorn State Braves, the repeat SWAC champions with the win over Southern in their home on their home field, back-to-back champs for them. We will also get into what that means for the Celebration Bowl 5. The 5th year of the Celebration Bowl will be a rematch, and actually it'll be the third meeting in the 5 years of the bowl between Alcorn State and North Carolina A&T. We'll also get into talking about Florida A&M, who made a little bit of news last week as they had their celebration and made their claims to the Black College Football Championship. And let's see, what else? We'll also get into the finalists, of course, at the end of the year, all these postseason awards and things of that nature. The Black College Football Hall of Fame listed their 5 finalists for the Black College Football Player of the Year. And I definitely think there was it's interesting little discussion or conversation we may have on that, as I thought there were definitely some names left off. Some stat leaders from the past year. AD has finally had a chance to tabulate it all, and we will run through the HBCU players that rank nationally among the best of the best in various categories. And then, of course,
the first pages, as I like to call them.
First page statistic leaders. And then, of course, we'll wrap it up with what we have affectionately called Drew's Dimes. As we start to move into basketball season, it'll be the the second edition of Drew's Dimes for this season. I guess we'll call it this season. But, Drew, why don't you tell the people where they can find us on social media, Facebook, internet, and all that fun stuff?
For those of y'all who are tech savvy or who want to communicate with us via social media, you can find me at BCSN Drew, that's BCSN DRW, and you can find my partner in crime, Dr. B, as we like to call him, at DRB365. Once again, that's DRB365 on Twitter. You can also find us on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at MyBCSN and the number 1, and of course on the World Wide Web at www.mybcsn.net. So did I do a good job covering all of that, Bryan?
Yeah, definitely. I think, did you hit the Facebook pages too?
My BCSN1, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and even on our YouTube channel.
There you go. All right, so the SWAC championship game, of course, is going in now. I'm going to try to do the math here, and I don't think I'm going to do this right. I should have done this in, pre-show. This is the 21st year, of course. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for the totals here. It's the 21st year of the SWAC championship game. Of course, it started back in 1999 with Jackson State and Southern actually winning that contest 31-30 in the very first year. And of course, over this past decade, this thing has pretty much been run by two particular schools, Alcorn State and Grambling. Grambling won in 2011, 2016, 2017. Alcorn State in 2014, 2015, and last year in 2018. So obviously, without Grambling being in this game, this pretty much is Alcorn State's opportunity, and it would be their opportunity to win their fourth SWAC championship, actually the fourth in the past 6 years, and it actually would probably give them the moniker of SWAC Team of the Decade, most likely. So as we head into this ball game, I guess the first thought that I wanted before we get into actually the game, AD, just for the record, what's your thought on? Obviously, I don't want to get into asking about whether this has been a good move for the SWAC. I initially, when it first happened, I was kind of miffed that the SWAC would do this. But over time, I think they have really cemented their brand. And obviously, more recently, with the addition of Dr. Charles McClellan as the commissioner of the SWAC, they are very focused and very brand aware of who they are. Having decided to move to a home field type thing. But what about, we've seen conference championships in other conferences. The MEAC doesn't have one. Is it time for the MEAC to think about having a conference championship?
We kind of hit on this last week, Bryan, and
right.
I thought about it more and more after our conversation last week. And the short answer to that is yes.
Okay.
Yes, it needs to happen for two reasons. A, the MEAC loses a little bit of relevancy, having usually about 4 weeks off between the last set of MEAC games and the Celebration Bowl, number one. And number two, Bryan, for probably can you remember, Bryan, when there was an outright MEAC champion, Bryan? Because I know the last 3-4 years there's been split titles in the MEAC.
Well, wasn't the year North Carolina A&T went undefeated? What was that, 2 years ago, when they went 12-0? They were the outright champion.
Outright champion, right?
Yeah.
But that's been more the exception than the rule in the MEAC, Bryan.
Correct. Yeah.
So, given the fact that the MEAC cannot crown a champion on the field, now it has gone from, they went from 11 football playing schools, Bryan, or was it 12 football playing schools?
I don't think they ever made it to 12, but yeah, I think it's been like 11.
There was 11 football playing schools when Savannah and Hampton were in the conference. Then they went to 10, knowing they were going down to 9 because Savannah State was leaving the year after Hampton left. So, with 9 teams. That they are the only conference that plays a true round robin. Kudos to the BAC for that.
Let me help you out, because this decade, I think, is really where what you're talking about has been it's been loaded, and I think the reason it's been loaded is because of a couple of years where they had and I don't understand this. I don't even want to go back into this to dig deep into it. But 2014, there were 5 co-champions. And then in 2015, there were 3 co-champions. Now, interestingly enough, 2018, it was North Carolina A&T by themselves. 2017, A&T by themselves. 2016, North Carolina Central. Then, of course, I mentioned 2015, where you had Bethune-Cookman, A&T, and Central. I believe A&T was the representative that won the tiebreaker and got to go to the Celebration Bowl. The year before that is where you had the 5-team cluster in 2014 of Bethune, Morgan State, A&T, North Carolina Central, and South Carolina State, all quote-unquote co-champions. The year before that, in 2013, was Bethune-Cookman and South Carolina State as co-champions. 2012 was Bethune-Cookman outright as champions. Now, 2011 was, I believe it was FAMU, but it was vacated, obviously, because of some penalties. So right now, as I'm looking on the MEAC website, it just says vacated. And then in 2010, you had a triumvirate of Bethune-Cookman, South Carolina State, and FAMU. So, yeah, like you said, the MEAC has had 4 years where they've had co-champions. Oh, and then if you – I don't know how you want to define this year, but if you were one of the people that wanted to define this year, you could either, if you want to give FAMU the title, you put an asterisk around it, or if you want to give South Carolina State and North Carolina A&T the title, you can put an asterisk behind that. But anyway, half of the decade has been, co-champions, which, compared to the years before that or the decade before that, you only really had 1 year where there was a co-championship, and that was in 2004 when Hampton and South Carolina State were the co-champs. So, it used to be a rare thing in the MEAC, but then all of a sudden it got kind of ridiculous over these last few years. I see what you're saying. So,
yeah, and I know part of that was the fact that in the MEAC until this year, everybody did not play everybody. They did not have the true round robin until this year. So that has helped. So you should have people winning the championship on the field because everybody plays everybody. But, if we're going to continue to have this co-champion and co-co-champion and co-co-co-champions, whatever else that we're going to call it, there needs to be that game during this past weekend.
Yeah, I think from a relevant standpoint of staying in sort of the cycle of things, if the MEAC seems to end their regular season the week before Thanksgiving. The Bayou Classic for the SWAC is the last weekend of the season, and then the week after is the championship. So really, if the MEAC were to introduce a football championship, they could do it the same weekend as the SWAC, which I think would be a nice day, given all that's going on championship Saturday or championship weekend, Friday and Saturday. It'd be great to have a couple of black college championships decided or conference championships decided at that time,
Or B, you could do it Thanksgiving weekend and do it early in the day, since the Bayou Classic is primarily a 4 or 5 o'clock start. You could have a BAC championship game at 12 o'clock Eastern time, possibly.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I'm not going to say that hosting something on the Thanksgiving weekend won't work, because Southern and Grambling have shown you that it works. But I think that's also a unique circumstance. I think the big question that will come up for the MEAC is, where could you host something like that on a Thanksgiving weekend where people will want to travel to? You know what I'm saying? Where along the eastern seaboard could you host that game and people want to leave? That was my first thought as well. I was thinking that as well.
Charlotte, it's geographically pretty central to the conference. Geographically, you get a good base out of Atlanta for the conference, which any HBCU conference, if you could pull people out of the Atlanta area, because it seems like all of the alumni from any of the HBCUs tend to migrate towards Atlanta. So if you could pull the Atlanta base out of there, in addition to you've got your 3 Carolina schools, which are right there, Central, A&T, and SC State. It's not that bad of a ride for Bethune, straight up I-95. FAMU is a little bit of a challenge, but FAMU is still within reason to get there. Even the northern teams, straight down I-95, Howard, Morgan State, Delaware State, all right down I-95. So it's a pretty easy commute for everybody. Did I leave a team out, Bryan?
I don't think so. If you did, they'll be all right.
But of the 9 teams that are in there, I think it's a pretty easy shot for the 9 teams straight down 95. If they're Charlotte.
It's not bad. I mean, exactly. I mean, for it's going to be what it's going to be for your deepest South teams, which are Bethune and FAMU, and it's going to be what it's going to be for I believe Delaware State or Howard, whoever your furthest northern schools, so
along with Morgan up that way.
Morgan, exactly. So I mean, look, it's going to be what it's going to be for them, but the idea is to create something that people will go to and travel to. That's the idea. And so, and where it's going to be reasonably mild. You don't want cold, but you want mild. I mean, you don't want hot. I don't think you want hot. You want mild. And so
you can't do it the following weekend because the ACC plays in Charlotte the following weekend, and you want to do it kind of as a standalone event.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think you want to. And it has to be, so you said it. I mean, and having it in an area where it makes sense to your fan base, and the Virginia, North Carolina region is MEAC home court. So if you can't find a place in the Virginia, North Carolina area, then I think, that's your big problem. But anyway, let's move the conversation forward. I did want to bring up one thing because we got to mentioning about the Southern and Grambling game, and this is something that came up after our podcast last week. We did a nice deep dive talking about that. But I got into a conversation with somebody, one of our contributors, and he was telling me, we were talking about the ratings for the Grambling and Southern game. Now, many people may have known, maybe didn't know, that 2 things happened this year. One is that the game moved off of NBC to NBCSN. We talked about that. And it also changed the game time from a early afternoon game from 1 or 2 o'clock when it used to be to like a 4 or 5 o'clock kind of start. And from some information that was shared with me, that was sort of one of the agreements that the conference and the schools came up with in agreement, because NBC didn't want to give the schools a 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock kickoff in sort of a primetime Saturday afternoon slot. So it was like if the schools wanted to move the time to a 4 or 5 o'clock, then you had to kind of be on NBCSN. Now, the thing about NBCSN, I went and looked at the ratings, and I'm taking a look at It's a website called sportsmediawatch.com, which has a lot of the ratings from different from that weekend of November 30th, November 29th. The Grambling Southern game, which is on NBCSN, rated at, they have various columns have a rating number, a plus minus, but then they have a viewers numbers and a plus minus there. So for week 14 of the college season, the highest rated game, of course, was the Ohio State-Michigan game. That was a 7.1 rating for Fox and 12.42 million viewers. Now, both of those numbers were – now, apparently, they have a column. The plus-minus column is supposed to be a comparison from week to week 13 or whatever Thanksgiving weekend was last year. That was week 13 of last year. So for that game, the rating was 5% less. The viewers were 6% less. So going down to the Bayou Classic, which goes all the way down, is a 5 p.m. kickoff on November 30th, NBCSN. There's no ratings number, but in terms of total viewers, 206,000, which is the lowest reported number of viewers on this list. There are only 4 other games that are even on this list below Grambling and Southern, and that's like some MAC games, Conference USA games, whatever. The 206,000 viewers is apparently 13% less than this game had last year. And so you do the math on, 13% less from a year ago. And I think a part of that is due to maybe people not knowing what channel the game was on. And then 2, AD, you got to think something that's not calculated into this is this was available to be streamed online. So I watched the game. We talked about this. I watched it online. Those numbers aren't in this mix. So there's no true reporting of what the streaming numbers are for this. So you don't know, if this was a successful switch or, did the conference, I should say, maybe Grambling and Southern more so than the conference, did they make a mistake? And it's too early to tell, maybe. So that's probably fair to say.
Well, if they made a mistake, this is one of the few mistakes that the SWAC has made over the last couple of years, starting with moving the conference championship game out of Houston. They seem to have made the right move over the last couple of years. So if they screwed this one up, then you got to give them a pass right now because everything else they've done so far has been good.
All right. So on to the SWAC championship game. You watched this game. You were able to watch it live. I actually had to go back and do some rewatching of this game. And so as I kind of went back and rewatched, I definitely took various notes through the action. And, of course, starting in the first quarter, I guess last year the visuals, and I've said this before, the visuals from the SWAC championship game were some of the, I thought, most impactful visuals in black college football, I thought, throughout the entire year. I just thought the producers did a great job of capturing the atmosphere. And maybe it was because it was a new thing, meaning new as in this was the first year this was at a home site or wasn't necessarily a neutral location. Maybe it was just Alcorn State. Maybe it was just Southern. But whatever it was, the atmosphere of the game was, I thought, unique that made it one of the best games of the year. And sure enough, I think this game will be thought of as probably a sloppy game, but it still turned out to be
to say the least.
Yeah. I mean, we had a total of 9 turnovers in this ball game. By my count, 7 lead changes throughout the course of this ball game, which that part kind of made it interesting. But I think also when you start this ball game off, each team on their first 2 drives have turnovers. I mean, you had, let's see, who started with the ball? Alcorn started with the ball. They end up with an interception. Then Southern ends up with a fumble. No, let me reverse that. I guess Southern started out with an interception because Alcorn had the ball first. So Southern intercepts Alcorn State. Then Southern has the ball first, and they make a fumble recovery, or they throw an interception. Excuse me. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, that was Southern's interception, or I should say, the interception by Alcorn was the one that almost turned into a touchdown. It was like a pitch that ended up being run all the way back to the 1 by Solomon Muhammad, I believe. And that was an exciting play. I mean, literally, he picked the pitch off in midair, ran all the way down to the 2.
Talk about reading the play. He had to study a lot of film to read that play exactly how he did.
Right, and so he's rumbling and stumbling and gets all the way down to about the 2-yard line before he gets dragged down. And then I believe on the next play, Felix Harper looks like he has a touchdown pass. It gets deflected by a Southern defender and intercepted. So I mean, literally, that is the first 4 possessions by each team turn into a total of 4 turnovers, right? And then that's the first quarter and that's the first half of the first quarter. Then we get to about the 2-minute mark, maybe about 2:10 left in the first quarter. Southern has gone on a very nice drive, a 90-yard drive at that, and they cap it off with a Jared Sims touchdown. The young man who had a good game against Grambling the week before in the Bayou comes up with a nice touchdown run. I believe that touchdown one was about 32 yards. And so at 2:07, he puts Southern up 7-0 to kick off the scoring. And then what do you know, on the ensuing kickoff, David Morrison, the defensive back for Alcorn State, he returns that for 89 yards. And so, boom, right like that, 11 seconds? 11 seconds later, we end up with a 7-7 ball game. So it's like, that's how the first quarter went. And then, we're not done. On the ensuing kickoff, after Alcorn returns it, Southern fumbles the kickoff return out of bounds at the 3-yard line. 2 plays later, they fumble the snap in the end zone, and there's a holding penalty in the end zone, and now Alcorn State is awarded a safety. That's your first quarter, AD. Unbelievable first quarter. So that's a
sloppy first quarter is probably a better way to put it.
What was it? Was it more sloppy, or was it sloppier, or was it entertaining?
It was
on a scale. Where would you rate that?
It was nerve-wracking for a fan, because if you're a fan of either one of these teams, you're like, what the heck is going on? Neither one of these teams was able to seem like they're able to figure it out.
You know what? I think if I recall last year's game, I don't know if it was the first quarter or the second quarter, but you had a similar kind of tit for tat that happened last year, where I think there were 28 points scored, and it was like a couple of long runs. I remember Deshaun Waller ended up with a couple of long runs, and I want to say this was all in the second quarter is where this happened last year. Either way, it was in the first half. So, I mean, it was either the first or the second quarter. But you had a similar back and forth by both teams, and so that was the first thing that popped into my head as this is going on. I'm thinking, oh, boy, here we go. We get a repeat of last year's craziness where you had 28 points in a quarter. So moving into the second quarter, Alcorn State has a 9-7 lead. And then with 10:34 remaining in the second quarter, Ladarius Skelton would actually get a touchdown run. Turned out to be his 13th rushing touchdown of the season. And that put Southern up 14-9. Now, it was interesting at this point, AD, because ESPN showed a stat that with about 10:30 to go at that point, they put a total yard stat up. Southern had 203 total yards. Alcorn State had 22. Again, at that point, 1 quarter and 5 minutes into the ball game, so basically 20 minutes of action, Southern was already at 203 yards. Alcorn State hadn't even broke 25 yards yet, but the score was sitting at 14-9. On that particular drive, it didn't take Alcorn State long as they went on a 75-yard drive in about 1:30. They had Felix Harper finally loosened up and looked like he had a couple of nice 20-yard pass plays to Ladarius Pringle and Anderson, the young man from I was looking for his name. I think his name was Ladarius. No, that's LaCharles. There's Ladarius. There's a LaCharles. And I apologize to the young man from Alcorn State. His last name is Anderson, but he's a receiver. Anyway, 2 nice plays, receptions, and they marched right down the field in about 1:30. Felix Harper to Turner on an option pitch, 3 yards, and just like that, that was Trey Turner. And Alcorn State now reclaims the lead 16-14. Take note already. So already we've got 2 lead changes, right? And then a little later into the quarter, Alcorn forces or recovers what turns out to be Southern's 3rd turnover of the ball game. At the 7:49 mark, that was Solomon Muhammad. So now he has an interception and a fumble recovery in this ball game already, and we're only in the middle of the second quarter. Maybe about 4 or 5 minutes later, Southern would get the ball back again. Ladarius Skelton would throw a duck, where literally the ball would slip out of his hands on a pass and just go in the air. Alcorn State intercepts it. Turnover number 4 for Southern now. So now Southern has 2 interceptions, 2 fumbles, and this is only the second quarter, and Alcorn State goes into halftime with a 16-14 lead. What were your
Have you ever seen a, for lack of a better, worse thrown ball than that last interception? I mean, I thought the ball was deflected coming out of his hand, which is why the ball looked like it went straight up in the air until they showed the replay. And that ball just totally slipped out of his hand. Like, what the heck?
Can't even call that a thrown ball. I can't even call that a thrown ball because it literally just, came out of his hand and just went straight up in the air. I mean, so I don't know what you call that. Just bad luck. But
and calling that a duck is doing injustice to ducks.
Right, quack. Yeah, no doubt. I was a little surprised that Southern was not running more. They had already scored at this point 2 touchdowns with the run. I know that Southern, you're the number 1 rushing offense. Alcorn State is the number 1 rushing defense. So you probably maybe think, well, if we're going to expose them, let's pass to set up the run. It just that strategy didn't work at all in this game. Did you get a sense of that strategy, or was it me just seeing something?
These teams know each other so well, Brian. Sometimes when you know a team that well, you outsmart yourself as a coach instead of, look, There are no secrets between these teams. Each team knows what their strength is. Each team knows what the weakness of the other team is. But you have to have enough confidence in yourself and in your system to just say, hey, we're going to stick to what we do, and we don't care what they do. We're going to do what we do well, and it should put us in a chance to win. Not let's go away from the grain and hope that we can fool them, because you won't be able to fool them for long.
Right. Another thing I found interesting in the first half is the number of times that they showed this graphic. Every time they went to Dawson Odoms, the head coach for Southern, they showed this graphic, Dawson Odoms, 1-9 record versus Alcorn State. And at some point you're just thinking, man, I mean, that 1-9. And remember, we talked about that earlier in the year back when it was 1-8. And we were just like, that's a mighty hill to climb. But that graphic popped up twice in the first half. And, I think that, I don't know whether it was Tiffany Green or Jay Walker, one of them commented that Coach Dawson and them, they were tired of that narrative. I'm like, well, winning resolves that narrative real quick. So I mean, you want to get rid of that narrative, win, but that was like one of those graphics that popped up, and I just thought it was kind of funny every time it popped up. I almost turned into a drinking game. If that thing would have popped up a few more times, we might have had a drinking game. All right, let's move into the third quarter. And Ladarius Skelton, with about 9:29 to play in the third quarter, would throw another interception at the Alcorn 7. That one was that was his third interception of the day, and it was probably the worst timed one, because you're in the red zone, you're at the 7-yard line, knocking on the door with an opportunity to score. So you're down 2 points, or even a field goal puts you up, and you end up turning the ball over right there. And so that is, at that point, that's Southern's 5th turnover of the ball game. Not to be outdone, of course, because why would they be in this particular ball game? But Alcorn State throws an interception. It commits their 3rd turnover. It's Felix Harper's second interception of the ball game. A costly penalty, though, on the return took away what might have been a scoring. It would have set Southern up in the red zone inside about the 20, maybe about the 15-yard line. But there was a penalty on the return, probably I think it was a block in the back or something of that nature, that brought the ball all the way back to midfield. And so Southern would end up starting somewhere in their own territory in the 45-yard mark, I think, instead of having it in Alcorn State territory. Now, what I thought would be one of the more controversial plays, and fortunately it did not come back to haunt Alcorn State, is there was a fumble by Southern at about the 8:30 mark of the third quarter. And this is like right after that interception that brought the ball back. So, I mean, we almost had our 6th Southern turnover. Literally, I mean, we almost had that. Remember that stretch at the beginning of the ball game where we had four turnovers? It seemed like we were about to have another little turnover plague again when the Southern running back, and I don't know if it was Devon Ben or Gerard Sims, I don't recall, but anyway, he had the ball knocked out of his hands, but the officials had somehow blown the whistle and called him down. Now, the officials did not have a good line of sight, in my opinion. Nobody did. And the ball came out clearly in replay. On replay, it was clearly visible that, hey, this is a turnover. I mean, the ball, before the player even fell down, the ball was out, and it was like 3 yards away from him. So Alcorn State had actually recovered the ball, but because the officials blew the whistle dead, it ended up being Southern's ball. And so that ended up hurting temporarily. It seemed like it might be a point that, this would kind of hurt them. Southern would get down and get a 41-yard field goal after the review of that fumble, and they would take a lead 17-16. A little bit later in that quarter, Alcorn State would miss a 36-yard field goal. Here we are, AD, going into the fourth quarter. Southern with a 17-16 lead. Any thoughts there in the third quarter?
No, just a little bit cleaner, but it still was not. There was no clean quarter of football in this game, Brian, even though that was probably a little bit better.
Yeah, of all the scoring, only 3 points scored in that third quarter, and that was the 41-yard field goal by Cesar Barajas of Southern. So here we go into the fourth quarter, and right out the chute, Alcorn State would Felix Harper, the offensive player of the year in the SWAC, would connect with LaCharles Pringle on a beautiful 56-yard touchdown pass. I mean, literally Southern with blown coverage. I mean, all you saw was, if you watched the play live, if you watched the replay, all you saw was Pringle he didn't have to turn. It was just a straight go route down the seam. For some reason, the Southern safety, play action and kind of bit him. Nobody moved, and it was just probably the easiest touchdown pass that Felix Harper has thrown all season. He's thrown a lot of them this year. That was 56 yards. They went for two and missed the 2-point conversion. So now we have another lead change, the fifth lead change at this point in the ball game. Alcorn's up 22-17, 14-11 to go. Moving into about 5 or 6 minutes later, Southern would get a little bit of revenge. Ladarius Skelton with another touchdown run from 8 yards out. They would kick the PAT. Southern back on top, 24-22. And now we've got our sixth lead change. And you're sort of thinking, okay, Southern, with all of the mistakes they've made, are sitting on a 2-point lead at this point in the ball game. Alcorn State would come back on the next drive, get into field goal range where their field goal kicker, Corey McCullough, can knock down a 23-yard field goal. And now Alcorn State has regained the lead 25-24 with 5:07 to play, and it's getting crunch time now. Now it's crunch time, AD, and you're thinking, oh, my God, anything can happen in these final 5 minutes. It has a similar feel to where this championship game was a year ago. Southern they had an opportunity late in the fourth quarter. Their quarterback got hurt, and Alcorn State seized it and made the most of the situation and never gave Southern another opportunity back.
I want to back up one step, Brian.
Yeah, sure.
When Southern scored points, the touchdown to give them the 24 to, I believe it would have been 24-16 at that point, Brian.
24-22, right.
Well, right, they get 24-22. Why didn't Southern go for the 2-point? I'm still trying to understand that.
Southern's up. Southern's up 2. Why go for 2? You rarely. They were up 1. They were up 1.
They would have put them up 3, which would have made it a field goal game at that point. Alcorn came down and scored and wound up getting the field goal later on to take the 25-24 lead. It's fourth quarter, Brian.
Yeah, but AD, I don't think I can't recall the last time a coach has done that from a lead position when he's been in the lead.
If you check the coach's chart, I guarantee you that chart says you go for 2 in that situation to put you up 3 in the fourth quarter.
Up 1? You're up 1.
You score over one with the PAT puts you up 2. 2 points does you no good at that point. 1 point, you're in the same position whether you're up 1 or up 2, so you might as well go for 3 and ensure that you're up at least a field goal. So that what happened later on when Alcorn came down to kick that field goal, now Southern is playing from exactly instead of Southern playing from behind, which really influenced how Southern played those last 5 minutes of that game, Brian.
That's a good point. Now that I think about it, because, you're right. Either way, if you don't get it, you're down 1 instead of being – or you're up 1. Yeah, you're up 1 versus being up 2. I get what you're saying. Yeah, I think I just said that wrong. But, okay. That makes sense. But, that's one of those charts where does your chart – I don't think you – okay, put it like this. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't think you make that play in the first half or even in the first 3 quarters, but does your coaching chart show that in the fourth quarter? Yeah.
In the fourth quarter, you make that play.
Good point. Well, I mean, with all respect to all coaches, I thought, some of the things that I thought Fred McNair had a better coaching day than Dawson Odoms. And, it was Dawson Odoms had a great coaching day last week in the Bayou Classic, and I think not so great of a day in this championship game, so good point. All right, moving forward here in the final 5 minutes of this ball game, this is where I think things got really interesting for me because Southern's driving at about the 4:10 mark left in the fourth quarter on a 3rd and 14. Ladarius Skelton scrambles, and he's trying to get to the 49-yard line, to the Southern 49. He actually gets there, in my opinion, but and even Tiffany, if you go back and listen to the audio, Tiffany Green, who's calling the game, thought that he had gotten the first down, that he had got enough yardage. But the spot by the official set the ball back at the 48-yard line. Now, I went and paused it, looked at it right when his knee fell, and that was a spot that should have been reviewed. Somebody should have called for that to be reviewed, and somebody should have came out and done a measurement. Now, Southern's got 3 timeouts, and for the life of me, did not use their timeouts in the second. They didn't use these timeouts in the second half. I don't know whether they knew they had them or they just, they weren't thinking about needing to use them. But anyway, that would have been a case in point where I would have called timeout, and somebody should have called timeout. Somebody should have yelled in Coach Odom's ear from up above and say, hey, Coach, that's a bad spot. I think that spot is close enough, and they marked us a yard short. So now you have Southern going for it on a 4th and 1, and here we are at that point, number 1 rush offense versus number 1 rush defense. Defense wins as the Southern running back. I mean, he got within an inch, AD, I thought, before he got turned backwards. I mean, he almost made it across the yellow stripe on the ESPN the ESPN screen, but he got turned back. They spotted it and came up short. And it was kind of interesting that was the play that people were wondering or questioning, when really the play before is the one that hurt Southern, and that's the one that they should have looked at. How did you see that play? Did you catch that at all there?
Yeah, and it was a kind of an unfortunate situation for Southern, the number 1 rated rushing team, in a position where they couldn't afford to run the ball, basically. So that's that strength versus strength thing, but they were not able to play their strengths because of some of the poor decisions that they made early in the game, Brian.
So Alcorn State gets the ball back at the 748-yard line with about 3:20 to play. And sure enough, right on the next play, I thought this was the back-breaking play of the game. If that defensive stop wasn't the play game, it was the next play in which Deshaun Waller, the star of last year's SWAC championship game, broke off a 31-yard run that basically put Alcorn into the red zone. And then 2 plays later, as Southern had decided to let Alcorn score, Waller basically walked into the end zone and from 6 yards out, and now it's a 32-24 lead. Did they go for the 2-point play? I'm looking here. No, it was just a normal extra point kick. Yeah, because they were up 1, so they went for a normal kick, and now it's an 8-point ball game.
8-point game.
8-point ball game with 1:57 to play.
And that's what the chart tells you to do, go from 1 in that spot.
Correct. Yeah. So 2nd and 2 for Southern on the next drive. They end up getting another little controversial moment that pops up on this next drive by Southern. They actually, on a 2nd and 2, end up getting a first down with about 1:34 to play. And in theory, the clock should have stopped at that point, but it doesn't. It actually runs another 5 seconds before the officials say, hey, they got the first down, stop the clock. So that 5-second delay, who knows? Again, Southern with 3 timeouts. I'm looking at the screen like Southern has 3 timeouts. Why aren't they using them? Anyway, they didn't use it. They let the clock run. 5 seconds. Who knows what 5 seconds is or is not? But anyway, on the very next play from the left hash, Darius Skelton throwing to his far right, and you know what that means. That's just a recipe for a pick 6. Sure enough, 55 yards out, Torrance Wilson picks it. He's running down the sideline, and you just know at that point, ball game over. Alcorn State's gonna repeat a SWAC champs. You can see it. The minute he threw it, you're like, oh my God! All someone has to do is pick this up. Boom, pick off, pick 6, gone to the house, and Alcorn State wins the ball game. Final score: Alcorn State 39, Southern 24. That was the 6th turnover of the game by Southern. I think in all, and I was just kind of looking for this, but Darius Skelton he's only credited with 3 interceptions in the ball game, 18 of 30 passing, 159 yards, 3 interceptions. Felix Harper was 12 of 25, 226, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. But it was not a pretty game whatsoever. Alcorn State went unbeaten at home this year. That was probably the thing that was, this is a team that finishes now with a 9-3 record, 9-3 record, and a perfect record at home. Those 3 losses all coming on the road to Grambling, McNeese State, and to Southern Miss. And for Dawson Odoms, from 1-9 to 1-10 versus Alcorn State. I heard this AD brought up, and then you tell me if you agree or you find this true. Some teams, I heard Jay Walker on this broadcast say, sometimes people just have those, I'm paraphrasing here, sometimes people just have those demons that they can't overcome. And for for Southern, it's Alcorn State. And for Alcorn State, it's Grambling. And for Grambling, it's Southern. I thought that was kind of interesting. You must not agree with that I don't know if you're there or not.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'm just talking and I hit the wrong button. But yeah, it's interesting as that little triangle is going on between those 3, where everybody has the other person's number. But I hate to say it. Don't you have the same thing going on in the BX, Brian?
Yeah, I guess so.
Bethune has FAMU's number. FAMU has A&T's number. And actually, it's probably a four-way.
A&T has Bethune's number.
Yes.
Or, yeah, if I said that right, yeah.
Yeah, A&T has Bethune's number. So it's a little, you know, and that happens in some of these conferences where teams know each other so much, and a lot of these coaches have shared, have been on each other's coaching staffs, be it at those schools or at other schools. So it does not surprise me at all, Brian.
For Southern fans, before we get to talking about A&T or Alcorn, I'm curious about Southern. If you're a Southern fan, what's your thought of? I hate to say what's your thought of Dawson Odoms. What's your thought of these past 8 years that he's been at the helm? I mean, it makes you wonder, is there a level of frustration, I think, especially when you have been so close, you know, when you've been so close and then all of a sudden you've had it snatched away from you by, you know, by if it's not Grambling beating you in the Bayou, which, you know, they've kept you prior to these last 2 years. Southern was kept out of the championship game, you know, by Grambling State 3 previous years. 2014 Southern, you know, again, the era, the Dawson Odoms era against Alcorn State is troubling. But anyway, what's your thoughts if you were a Southern fan on what we've seen, and how do you process the loss to Alcorn, and then just the season in general? 8-5 is the final record for Southern.
Don't take offense to this, Brian, but if I'm a Southern fan, a Southern faithful, I'm starting to make a little bit of grumblings about maybe he's not the coach to get us over the top. He's a good coach, but maybe he's not the one who can get us over the top.
Well, you know, you see, you know, going back and looking at the history here, they did win the title in 2013. That is the, you know,
you just asked how I would feel as a Southern fan. That's how I would feel as a Southern fan.
Okay.
He has not won the big game.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, you're measured on your success, and hey, okay, good point. Moving over to Alcorn State, their 4th title in the past 6 years, their 4th in this decade. Fair to say, Alcorn State SWAC team of the decade. I was saying Alcorn State, you know, 4 SWAC championships in the past 6 years. Unfortunately, they have not won the Celebration Bowl. It was Grambling who won the Celebration Bowl. Would you look at Alcorn as the team of the decade, or would you call it and say maybe it's a tie between them and Grambling?
Well, not to be giving it to the recency bias, because definitely over the last half of the decade, yes, Alcorn is the team of the decade. But honestly, Brian, I would have to really go back and look and do the research to see what happened in the first half of this decade before I could claim Alcorn the team of the decade in the SWAC.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty all over the place the first few years, the first 4 years. I mean, this you had Jackson State that won it. Well, no, excuse me. You had the first 4 years of the decade. Your champions were Texas Southern, Grambling State, Arkansas Pine Bluff, and Southern. So that was the first 4 years before we got into Alcorn State winning it twice, Grambling State winning it twice, and now Alcorn State winning it twice again. So, I mean, that's kind of what that is. What other notes? Oh, your MVP, offensive MVP, LaCharles Pringle, the wide receiver for Alcorn State, 5 catches, 145 yards. That's an average of 29 yards per catch and 1 touchdown. So LaCharles Pringle, doing a good job there. We saw a Deshaun Waller sighting with the touchdown, of course, 12 carries, 52 yards. Nico Duffy, the future of the Alcorn State running backs, 15 carries, 63 yards. Still no, and I don't know if this ever came out, AD, but still no mention of Noah Johnson. They made one little mention of him, and I didn't see him. I don't know whether Mr. Johnson has moved on with his career and graduated, and I just kind of, it's just odd how you don't hear certain things. I mean, the guy who started out as the preseason player, maybe we just missed that release, or maybe we just missed that news. I don't know. I just know it's kind of odd that all of a sudden Noah Johnson kind of gets hurt. Felix Harper steps in, and then Felix Harper becomes the next best thing since sliced bread. So it's just kind of odd. A couple of things. Well, I want to do this. Let's take a break for a moment. And when we come back, I did want to get into kind of talking about the broadcast, just a couple of notes, a couple of thoughts that came out of the broadcast. And then we can just quickly kind of set the Celebration Bowl and just some general thoughts about the Celebration Bowl in general. So let's do that. Let's take a break. You're listening to the Sports Wrap with Bryan and AD. We'll be back right after these words.
This December 21st, the best in HBCU football will collide in Atlanta at the Celebration Bowl. MEAC versus SWAC. Champion versus champion. Only one team will rise above the rest and claim the coveted Celebration Bowl trophy. Come join the celebration at Mercedes-Benz Stadium this December. For more information, visit thecelebrationbowl.com.
Let's face it, shopping for insurance can be time-consuming. That's why when it comes to your auto, home, and life insurance needs, make things simple and trust the experts at Allstate. They will help you get the coverage that fits your needs while helping you bundle your life, home, and auto policies. Bundling saves you money, sure, but it also saves you time, so you can enjoy the things that matter most even more. Contact me, Tammy Haynes, your local agent, for a free personalized insurance quote. Allstate, are you in good hands?
Now, you can't live in Texas and not have a good red meat blend. Texas Cowboy Dust is designed for steak and other red meats. It's out to be my most popular spice blend, made with onions, peppers, ground mushrooms, pink salt, and other spices. Texas Cowboy Dust also goes great with chicken, pork, vegetables, and adds a restaurant-quality sheen to gravies and sauces.
It's like a loot machine. All around town, people trying to get down. It's like a loot machine.
Welcome back to the BCSN Sports Wrap. Brian Fulford and AD Drew here, wrapping up week number 15. The last segment, we just kind of went in depth talking about the SWAC championship game. Congratulations to the Alcorn State Braves, the repeat SWAC champions, and with their 39-24 win, they get ready to, in 2 weeks' time, will take on North Carolina A&T in the Celebration Bowl for the third time in the 5-year history of the Celebration Bowl. That's what's up ahead. Alcorn State with a record of 9-3, North Carolina A&T at 8-3. Alcorn State moves into our number 2 ranked team in our BCSN top 5. They are now the second team in Black College Football Division I with 9 wins. Of course, overall, Bowie State with 11, finished their regular season 11-1. And just a couple of thoughts, AD, and I don't know, feel free to jump in here. I came away with a couple of thoughts, and I was also just kind of observing the ESPN broadcast. And, of course, Tiffany Green, Jay Walker have done a great job all year long. I thought when it got to, okay, so I was a little surprised, of course, I mentioned the fact that nobody seemed to mention the Noah Johnson factor with Alcorn. And that's a storyline that I thought, you go from an offensive player of the year, preseason player of the year, to the Felix Harper story. I think that's one of the overwhelming stories that really has really captured Black college football this year. I think it's a great story. I think that the only other story that, in my opinion, kind of rivals it is Jerome Johnson and what he did at Bowie. I mean, the fact that, he similarly came in after 2 or 3 games had already been played, and he replaced an all-conference player. And I don't know whether you call him an All-American or whatever you want to call Noah Johnson, what he was last year, but then to come in and just sort of pick up and do just as well, if not better. I mean, it's one of the reasons why Harper was the offensive player of the year, in which he threw 29 touchdowns. I'm just looking at it here. He threw 29 touchdowns, a pass efficiency rating of 167.85, and 2,387 passing yards. And he did all that in, I don't know, I'd say probably 8 games that he played in. I mean, just outstanding work by Harper. I thought that was underplayed by the broadcast. Were there any storylines that, as you were listening or maybe thinking about, that you were surprised that didn't get brought up?
No, that's the big storyline. The one thing I do like that they brought up was, they played a little bit on the Steve McNair legacy there at Alcorn, with the fact that they have finally retired his number, and I thought that was a good job by the broadcast team, just playing on the Steve McNair legacy there for that university.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the McNair name, I mean, so many McNairs have gone through, the fact that Fred McNair himself was a former quarterback. I mean, you look at him, he's a big guy. He doesn't look like maybe what you'd expect a quarterback to look like, but he was Air McNair 1, and the fact that Steve technically was Air 2 is something that escapes a lot of people who may not know the whole story. The other thing, okay, and I'm about to show my FAMU bias here. So I'm just prefacing this now. At halftime, of course, our Jay Walker, he does what he does, and he has his Gimme 5 and his power rankings and all kinds of different things, that I don't know whether he believes them or whether he is just doing it to sort of spark debate and conversation. I mean, I don't know if
he's definitely doing that part of it.
Yeah, I don't know if he's purposely becoming the Skip Bayless of Black college football or what. I don't know. I don't have a read on it yet. I think I need to see it a few more years before, but that's just where I feel like it's going. But anyway, one of the things that get brought up is the fact that earlier in the week, last week, Florida A&M claimed their conference and Black college national champions, or claimed themselves as conference and Black college national champions. And so as Jay is going through this, and he's kind of like, he was like, "What are you doing, fam?" He was like, I said, "I get it if you want to say you are the MEAC champions," but he just kind of drew a line through, claiming Black college national champions.
I think that was a company line thing because, ESPN has promoted the Celebration Bowl as the Black College National Championship. So in order to stay with that storyline, he has to promote either A&T or Alcorn as the SWAC at that point in time. Whoever won the SWAC championship, along with A&T as the national champion.
Right. Okay.
Because Jay Walker has to tote the company line.
I get what Jay Walker's doing, but here my beef right now is going to be with Tiffany Green a little bit, because as he's explaining or trying to figure out why is FAMU doing this, and I know he's digging at her as a FAMU alum, and he's sort of poking at her, and she knows what's being said out there by Rattler Nation. There was no defense to why would FAMU claim themselves Black College National Champions when she could have easily gone to two particular stats, two things that if she listens to our podcast, I know she's heard before, but it's just out there. It is not hard to look up. We can go with most wins. Outside of Bowie State, and unless you're considering Bowie part of the conversation in the Black College National Championship debate, no other team in FCS in Division I has more wins prior to Alcorn winning than FAMU with 9. Okay? Nobody. No, and then the number 2 case you could have gone to is 2 losses. That is the number of losses FAMU has had overall. Nobody has that few losses, not even A&T, not over South Carolina State, not even Alcorn State. 2 losses. And since everybody who played a FCS or FBS team lost to them, if you want to say just against FCS or lower, well, guess what? The only loss for FAMU was who? Bethune-Cookman at the end of the season. So she could have gone to those 2 points and really shut that whole conversation down for Jay. And maybe she's being politically correct because ABC has to call this matchup the Black College National Championship. Well, I'm telling you, it's not, and it's been said out there. I've heard Steve Gaither from HBCU Game Day write this and say this. This is not the Black College National Championship game. It's worked out that way because of the teams over the last few seasons, but this is the one year where it may not work out that way. And so I think, I'm a little disappointed that she didn't take the opportunity to shut Jay down when he, chose to bring up what he did against FAMU. That's all. So, I need Tiffany Green to at that point, even for 10 seconds, represent with some orange and green and just tell Jay, hey, Jay, who has more wins in Black college football than FAMU? Hey, Jay, who has fewer losses in Black college football than FAMU? I'm just saying what's out there. And that would have been all she needed to say, and it would have been over. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree.
All right, moving on. My last little commentary here. I'm very uncomfortable. For me, I just cringe in the post-game celebrations because we always get the awkward reporter questions from the winners and sometimes the losers. But there's always the podium questions, which always make me cringe. And I'll just say that it was cringeworthy, not to the high degree, but it kind of just left me, as I watched it online, it just was kind of, it was tough. I mean, what are you supposed to ask them? What would you, AD, if I gave you the mic, what are 1 or 2 questions that you're asking if given that opportunity to ask someone on the stage after they just won the championship? What's one or two questions? Can you think of anything off the top?
You just talking about a generic, as in anybody winning, or in this game is specifically?
Let's say this. We're talking a football game, football championship.
Just generic.
What do you think? You're going generic?
I'm just saying if I go with a generic question, the big thing is to try to capture that moment in time. You see the game. You want to play on the emotion of the coach or the player that you're interviewing, because there's only one opportunity to capture that moment in time and how they're feeling at that moment in time. We can talk about the game all day long. You can get your stat sheet, you can talk about the game, but how are you feeling at that moment in time? Especially if you just had a big game-winning drive or game-defining defensive stop, and you were a key portion of that, kind of what's going through your mind. Those are the type questions that at that moment in time, I'm not just asking you to break down the whole game for me right then and there. That's not fair, because you just want to celebrate. So I think the question should be a little bit more celebrational versus analytical.
Okay. Well, anyway, it was just kind of one thing that was my last final thought. I mean, I already mentioned the no mention of the spot reviews. I thought that was I would have liked to have seen them to go into that a little more, but it is what it is. But overall, I'd give it about overall the broadcast. I mean, great job again. To Tiffany and Jay and all the people from ESPN. And again, congratulations to the SWAC for continuing to be a leader in the marketplace, and Dr. McClellan. They really are setting a big shoe to fill that needs to be filled, and they're doing a great job. I mean, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but whatever, they're doing a great job. Anyway, let's move on, AD, because we got the Celebration Bowl coming up in 2 weeks. 9-2 Alcorn State, 8-3 A&T. Two teams that pretty much have been they're probably two of the three dominant programs in this decade. I'd probably say Grambling would be the other one. What's the first thought about this game? We'll break this down, obviously, later on next week, but what's maybe your initial thoughts about this game upcoming?
A&T's defense versus Alcorn's offense. That's my first thought, Brian.
Mm-hmm. Why?
What was that?
Well, I mean, do you feel like what? This is a better A&T defense than last year?
I don't think it's better than it was last year, but I don't think Alcorn's offense is as good as it was last year either. So, but on paper, looking at these two teams and what they're known for, A&T still has one of the top defenses in HBCU football. Alcorn has one of the top offenses in HBCU football. So, strength on strength, top defense versus top offense. That's what comes to mind when I think of this game, Brian. Initially.
Okay. I think every game, if I'm not mistaken, I heard this said during the broadcast, every Celebration Bowl has been decided by less than 7 points. I have no reason to believe this will be any different. I think what has always been a help to the MEAC is that they've got an extra 2 weeks preparation and rest and recovery that they get in between this game. But I think this is as good a year as any if Alcorn State's going to win. I think on paper now, Alcorn State comes in with the better team. I think they come in with the better quarterback. I think they come in with two solid running backs even though, I mean, Jermaine Martin has had a great season and is an outstanding back. But I think the Duffy and Deshaun Waller combination is as good as there is. And then, as you said, you've got the number one rush defense in the SWAC and probably one of the top rush defenses. I don't know. You did the math. You did the stats on this, AD. You tell me where Alcorn's rush defense ranks nationally or compared to A&T. But I would say they come in with a rush defense that probably is in a better place to slow down Deshaun Waller than – actually, they did a good job last year against Markel Cartwright, if I'm not mistaken. So, there's a good opportunity for Alcorn State to get a win this year, I think.
I agree. I really want to see what Alcorn's defense is going to do with Jermaine Martin. Alcorn has one of the top rush defenses, and the number one back in FCS as far as the HBCUs is Jermaine Martin. So that's going to be a real interesting matchup right there also.
One final thing about the Celebration Bowl before we move on. Obviously, we'll have more talk about the Celebration Bowl next week. But I want to encourage anyone that's listening to this, anybody who may be watching the college bowls or just looking at the list of college bowls, I encourage you to take a look and see, does the Celebration Bowl appear on the listing of college bowls, whether it be the website, CBS, ESPN, your local newspapers a lot of times will have a listing of all the bowls. The Celebration Bowl, I noticed last year, was left off many lists. I brought this up here locally where I live with the Orlando Sentinel, that, hey, the Celebration Bowl isn't listed. It's the first, and last year, now this year is not the case, but last year, and I think in other previous years, it was the very first bowl of the bowl season. Now this year, because of the holidays and such, I think there's some bowls that take place on Friday night, December 20th, and then on December 21st, it is the first bowl of the day, Saturday. I think there's like 5-6 games that day. It's the first one of the day. But anyway, the Celebration Bowl is part of the Football Bowl Alliance or Association. The Football Bowl Association is the organization that basically brings in all 41 bowls, helps them. They sort of manage, how these bowls communicate with each other, some of the rules that go on in terms of all the things that go on with bowls. It's sort of the background organization is the Football Bowl Association. The Celebration Bowl is part of that. The Celebration Bowl should be listed with the 40 other bowls. So whenever you see that the Celebration Bowl is not listed, send them a tweet, send them an email. Let these people know, the editors of these websites, the newspapers, whatever it is, let them know that, hey, why? Ask the question. And then tag the Celebration Bowl. Say, hey, why isn't the Celebration Bowl included in your list of college bowls? It is part of the Football Bowl Association. It airs on ABC, the national network, ABC, not the cable ABC or TV or whatever. No, it is on the big channel, ABC at noon. At noon.
The big boy.
Yes. I mean, hell, the national championship game doesn't even air on ABC. It airs on ESPN, if I'm not mistaken. So this game airs at noon on ABC. And so we as Black college football fans, alums, football players, administrators, coaches, whenever we see it, we need to call it out. We need to tweet it. There needs to be a concerted effort wherever we are in this country, because that is the only way this bowl will we need to make it relevant, and not only by attending it, but we also need to make it relevant by viewing it, but more importantly, talking about it. See, talk leads to action. Talk leads to interest because they don't think anyone's paying attention to it, so they don't talk about it. And I'm even talking so far, AD, this game is all the college bowl games are wagered on. You know, betting on college sports and sports in general is legal in probably a third of the country now. That game needs to be listed along with all the other games on the boards at the books in Vegas and wherever else, because it is that's how you get relevance. So that's my mission over these next couple of weeks, AD, and I'm imploring you and whoever else is listening and downloading to join me in getting the word out that, hey, the Celebration Bowl is a part of the Football Bowl Association, and as such, should be listed. Don't let them say that, oh, well, it's an FCS bowl. No. And it'll have more people in attendance than the FCS National Championship game, I'll tell you that. You know, whoever North Dakota State plays, it'll have more people than that. Okay? So, that's it for my little soapbox, AD. Anything you want to add to that, or did I cover it all?
I think you got it covered.
All right. Let's move on here. We talked about FAMU, our beloved university. Earlier in the week, claimed their national championship. Basically, through a series of tweets, decided to go ahead and have a celebration party to recognize their accomplishments with a 9-2 season. They even had a newspaper printed from the local Tallahassee Democrat, posters that say 2019 Black College Football National Champions. Now, as with anything, once a media organization has claimed you as the national champions, pretty much you can call yourself the national champions. Even though many of us, including the Black College Sports Network, that we are waiting until the end of the Celebration Bowl, what's your general thought on what FAMU did? And good move. Would you have waited? Do you understand it? Just, talk about that for a second while I pull up a couple of tweets here from a couple of different vantage points.
I understand why FAMU did it when they did. They did it probably before their broadcast so that they would get some mentions during the broadcast of the SWAC championship game, leading into the Celebration Bowl. And B, they wanted to do it while there still were students on campus to help them in celebrating the national championship. As this week right here is finals week at Florida A&M University, so they had an opportunity to share in the victory party with some of the local people who had expressed interest at one point in time in helping the guys out.
One of the people who was not pleased by this was Ken Rashad of HBCU Sports, HBCUsports.com. Formerly used to be the SWAC page. Back in the day when it used to be message boards, it would be MEAC fans, which I was a part of, and the SWAC page. And so that's how we used to get all of our info on schools. And there was a lot of trash talking that used to go on back in those days. It was very fun, but you spent a lot of time, trust me, I spent a lot of time during when I was supposed to be working on the message boards, keeping up with things that were going on. But anyway, as Mr. Rashad tweets at FAMU Athletics, your embarrassing PR stunt of claiming a national championship is yet another example of you refusing to play by the rules. What school claims a national championship while on probation? Question mark. You guys can't even claim an HBCU state championship, right? Comma at BCU Athletics. My only thing here quickly, I'll let you comment, AD, is you can't claim an HBCU state champion. It's claim a HBCU championship. A little grammar issue there. But anyway, your thoughts there on Mr. Rashad's comments, AD?
Sounds like a lot of shade and a lot of hate, Brian. I'm not going to justify it with too many comments. But, hey, anybody who wants to – FAMU has just as much right to claim the national championship as Bowie does, as the winner of the Celebration Bowl does, point blank. Hey, that's what college football is about. It's about debate and discussion, as very few times do we have an opportunity to win or lose the mythical national championship on the field. But, hey, even with FAMU claiming it or the winner of the Celebration Bowl claiming it, none of those teams played Hampton. None of those teams played Tennessee State. So is it a true national champion? It is what it is, Brian.
So Coach Willie Simmons had to send out a tweet the day after the celebration, and which he says, basically, I'm reading from I believe this is from a Facebook post. This is from Willie Simmons now. This says, as the head coach of the Florida A&M Rattlers football team, let me set the record straight so that there is no confusion. Due to our quote-unquote self-imposed postseason ban, we are not eligible for the MEAC championship. We are not, in bold all caps, we're not claiming to be the conference champs, but we are laying claim to the fact, all capitals, that we have the best, all capitals, record in the MEAC, which makes us the best team, 2 words, all caps, in the MEAC, exclamation point. We will, all caps, continue to celebrate this team for its accomplishments on and off the field this year. But let me be perfectly clear, ... we are not Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference champions for the 2019 season. We are just happy to be the best team. Hashtag FAMU Rising. Hashtag FAMULE. Hashtag Fight to Finish. Hashtag We Brag Different. That was from Willie Simmons. So my take when I first saw that was somebody in the conference office asked either the administration from FAMU to athletic. Obviously, FAMU's in the midst of an athletic director change. They asked somebody to basically switch or make a clarifying statement, because many people are thinking that FAMU is claiming a MEAC champion. And I love the way he said it. Did you come away with a similar thought on that one? When you saw that one, AD, did you come away with a similar take?
Yeah, Brian. Yes, I did.
All right. So I guess you brought up a good point about why FAMU didn't wait. I thought they did a great job of staying relevant, and I think that was the big thing, getting out and sort of being relevant at this stage in the ball game. And so what we have to do now, I honestly think we have to. And it's one of the articles I'm kind of working on, and kind of put together a comparative study or some kind of comparison chart between FAMU, Alcorn State, and Bowie, because I think those are your 3 contenders. Obviously, for polls like ours where we have a separate D1 and under D1, I think it's very safe to say Bowie State will be the under D1 national champs for our poll. The thing between FAMU and Alcorn State will probably come down to whether Alcorn wins the Celebration Bowl. It might even come down to how convincingly they win the Celebration Bowl. I don't know. But I do think there are going to be people who have in various polls that we talked about last week that have voted for North Carolina A&T are going to think about North Carolina A&T. And, I'm just going to I'm going to try to see both sides of it, but I'm going to try to put together something that again points out some of the reasons why FAMU, if things fall a certain way, why FAMU is still probably the Black College national champs. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if we can get a little traction from off of that. Let's do this. AD, let's take a quick break, come right back, and kind of finish up with this week's podcast with a couple other football notes, and then get into Drew's Dimes. Is the second edition of Drew's Dimes coming up right after these words. You're listening to the BCSN Sports Wrap with Bryan and AD. We'll be back right after these words.
Q Time is our classic Atlanta soul food restaurant located in the historic West End. Q Time Soul Food is a family business started by Fred and Christine Crenshaw. Come on in, relax, and sink your chops into our tantalizing, mouth-watering, distinctive soul food with a twist, the Q Time way. 1120 Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard, or call your order in at 404-758-2881. Do you miss your mama's cooking? Then come on down to Q Time, an Urban Passport member.
The Cuvée Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cuvée.
Let's face it, shopping for insurance can be time-consuming. That's why when it comes to your auto, home, and life insurance needs, make things simple and trust the experts at Allstate. They will help you get the coverage that fits your needs while helping you bundle your life, home, and auto policies. Bundling saves you money, sure, but it also saves you time, so you can enjoy the things that matter most even more. Contact me, Tammy Haynes, your local agent, for a free personalized insurance quote. Allstate, are you in good hands?
This December 21st, the best in HBCU football will collide in Atlanta at the Celebration Bowl. MEAC versus SWAC. Champion versus champion. Only one team will rise above the rest and claim the coveted Celebration Bowl trophy. Come join the celebration at Mercedes-Benz Stadium this December. For more information, visit thecelebrationbowl.com.
Welcome back to the BCSN Sports Wrap. Brian Fulford, AD Drew here, reminding you, follow us on Twitter. You can find me at DRB365. You can find AD. You can find him at BCSN Drew, DREW. Of course, make sure to find us, the Black College Sports Network, on Twitter and Instagram and on Facebook and YouTube. Search at MyBCSN1. That's MyBCSN1 is where you can find all of that. You can even find our Sports Wrap Facebook page. And, of course, on the web, www.mybcsn.net to find all of our articles, story recaps, broadcasts that we even do, so on and so forth. All right, AD. The Black College Football Hall of Fame. Well, actually, let me do one thing here first. Man, I won't do that. Let's go to Black College Football Hall of Fame. I'll stick to the script, AD. I was going to kind of go off script there for a second, but I said I'll stick to the script. The Black College Football Hall of Fame listed or released the names of the 4 individuals who are their Black College Football Player of the Year finalists. I do not agree. I do not disagree with any of these names that I'm going to read, but I think the bigger question, or maybe what we can debate, is why maybe some guys weren't included. So the names that were given, this was released late last week. You have Ryan Stanley, quarterback from Florida A&M. Of course, Ryan, I believe, was a first-team All-MEAC quarterback, set, I think, 4 different passing records as FAMU's all-time leader. Chris Rowland was the from Tennessee State, the wide return specialist, led FCS football in all-purpose yards, led FCS in receiving yards and receiving yards per game. He had 104 receptions, which broke Jerry Rice's record for most receptions in a single season among Black college football players. I believe he might have been number 2 in all-purpose yards per game. So Chris had a great season. He was literally the shining star in a very low lit season for Tennessee State. Felix Harper, quarterback from Alcorn State. Of course, we just mentioned some of his accolades, SWAC Offensive Player of the Year and such. And then Jermaine Martin from North Carolina A&T, the running back in his first year of starting. Martin actually was North Carolina A&T's leading rusher, rushed for 1,336 yards from scrimmage on 171 carries in 11 games, had 21 touchdowns, which I believe the 21 touchdowns was a new North Carolina A&T single-season record. He was number 4 in FCS in rushing yards per game with 121.5. And Martin is just a junior, so he will be coming back. But AD, the names who weren't there, I thought were sadly, I thought the names missing were almost as important as the names that were there. And I don't know, I say congratulations to those 4 young men, but I'm also thinking, what about Akil Glass? I mean, here's Akil Glass, who for Alabama A&M, he ranked, if I'm not mistaken, AD, did you have him ranked as number 5 in passing yard average? Is that what that is?
Yes, I believe so. I know he was ranked up there in passing yards average.
So that's 300 passing yards per game. Almost 50, about 45 yards more than Ryan Stanley per game average. He passed for 3,600 yards, which was tops among all HBCU quarterbacks. The only other quarterback to throw for over 3,000 yards was Cameron Rosendahl of Tennessee State. And, of course, half of his went to Chris Rowland. Anyway, Glass also threw 32 touchdowns against 11 interceptions. And, 273 completions on 445 pass attempts. And all of this in 12 games. I just thought, without honestly, Harper had an amazing year. And had Harper not had the year he had, Akil Glass would have been a first-team All-SWAC. He probably would have been the Offensive Player of the Year. What Harper did in relief of Noah Johnson was just outstanding. It was unexpected. And that is why he was awarded what he was awarded, rightly so. But I thought Glass should have been there to receive a Player of the Year accommodations. And the other name for me, AD, was Jerome Johnson of Bowie State, who I don't know if he's numbers rated. I don't know if you have his numbers rated anywhere in any particular categories. I just thought from
Jerome Johnson led Division II in passing efficiency. When I say led Division II, these are HBCU schools that we're talking about, ranked number 24th nationally in passing efficiency at 151.9.
Let me add, if I can, his 151.9 is better than Akil Glass, better than Ryan Stanley, better than Jawan Carter, DeAndre Harris, and Corey Fields, all in FCS. Only two people whose efficiency he was not better than was Shannon Patrick of UAPB and Felix Harper of Alcorn.
Right. So, and then we know he ranked up there in rushing yards also. So he was he was Conference Player of the Year. So for somebody who only played in 8 games, started 8 games, he had a tremendous year, Bryan.
Yeah. So was anybody outside of those guys that you would have included in a candidates list? And why do you think, do you have any thoughts on why those guys didn't make that list?
I've got one who's maybe an honorable mention. Xavier Smith from Florida A&M, sophomore wide receiver.
Right.
Averaged 7 catches. He averaged over 105 yards per game. So that's one other person who I thought should have been there, 112 all-purpose yards per game. So that's just one other person who had a tremendous year, who I think should have been maybe not included, but definitely was worth the honorable mention there, Bryan.
Yeah. Another name that I'll mention that maybe should have gotten some consideration, or I'm curious why he didn't. Deshaun Wethington for Shawan. The sophomore running back in only 8 games rushed for 1,377 yards, which was second most among HBCU Division II players. I mean, he finished behind Hosea Franklin, who played 11 games and ran for 1,417 yards. Wellington had 12 rushing touchdowns, which was second. Funny thing, his 12 rushing touchdowns was second in the conference to Emmanuel Wilson, who ran 13. He had 13 rushing touchdowns. But what cannot be disputed is his rushing yards per game. 172.1 is the average. And he did have a 300-yard game this year. I mean, he was the only player in black college football to rush for over 300. He ran for 307, which is one shy of the school record. And so I just, I'm a little miffed. And all credit, again, I hate to take away anything from those guys, but I just think, and I'm curious, my mind wants to know, why didn't so-and-so get a vote? Among those 4, go ahead.
I've got one more I want to throw out there. This guy in the NAIA ranks, Tim Whitfield out of Langston. He rushed for 1,301 yards, 130 yards per game average, which was number 2 in all of HBCU football. But Bryan, here's a stat that you'll be amazed at. He had 20 rushing touchdowns, and only one other person in HBCU football had more rushing touchdowns than Mr. Whitfield, and that would be Jermaine Martin at North Carolina A&T, Bryan.
Yeah, that's a good point. So definitely some guys that when we have our D1 and under D1 players of the year, offensive players, defensive players. We definitely have some interesting discussions to have as it relates to, which one of these guys will walk away with that award. Obviously, these 4 finalists and the names we mentioned all had great seasons. So I hate to sound like we're nitpicking, but just putting it out there for debate because we're curious. Of the 4, who would you vote for if you had a vote in this poll among these 4 guys? Who would you vote for?
Chris Rowland's definitely the player of the year, Bryan.
I agree with you. That'd be my vote. I agree with you.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Although I got a feeling if Rowland doesn't get it, I think it's going to Harper. I'm just gonna hedge my bet there that if it doesn't go to Rowland, it's going to Harper. I thought, AD, we'll save more about the stat leaders. How about we save a little bit of that for next week as we get into narrowing down our players of the year? Does that sound good?
Sound like a win.
And I did want to mention, we didn't mention the full complement of the SWAC players of the year. Last week we mentioned the CIAA, SIAC, and the MEAC. The SWAC came out with theirs before the SWAC championship game. And let's see. So they have a freshman of the year, newcomer of the year, defensive and offensive player of the year, and coach of the year outside of their first team and second team offense and defense. The freshman of the year was Abdul Fatai Ibrahim of Alabama A&M, and he had a great year. He ranked in the top 5 in the league in receiving yards, 1,004, receiving touchdowns, 11, receptions per game, 5.4, and receiving yards per game, 91.3. Ibrahim was one of only 3 receivers in the SWAC to have over 1,000 yards. So that was Ibrahim. The newcomer of the year, another one of those 1,000-yard receivers, I'm sure, and that was Texas Southern wide receiver Donnie Corley. He actually led the league in receiving with 1,039 yards. He had a conference-leading 103.9 receiving yards per game and was the only receiver in the league to average over 100 yards per outing. He had 72 catches this year and 3 touchdowns. So all credit and props there to Donnie Corley. Defensive player of the year, sophomore Keontae Hampton of Jackson State. The young man from West Point, Mississippi, led the league in tackles with 106. He had 13 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. He ranked in the top 5 in the SWAC in total tackles per game, and sacks. So that's sophomore Keontae Hampton. And then, of course, we've already mentioned Felix Harper as the offensive player of the year. And it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Fred McNair was the coach of the year. I believe it's the second year in a row McNair has won the coach of the year. So that's what he did, and congratulations to those guys. Obviously, we'll kind of copy and from the SWAC page the listing of players who made the first team SWAC. I got to give special shout out to Jordan Bentley, who I believe, and I said this earlier, and I was quoted it. It was quoted in a tweet that was later sent out. But I say it again, the most consistent running back the entire season was Jordan Bentley. He actually, your numbers, the numbers you pulled up, AD, what did he rush for this year? Like 1,400 yards this year? Yeah. 1,417 yards. Funny thing is, AD, he tied Hosea Franklin for most rushing yards in black college football overall. Bentley actually did it in 172 rushes. Franklin did it in 226. So, still, I mean, I think Bentley had 8 games this year where he had over 100 yards. 8. So and when I say he was the most consistent running back this year, I mean, yes, he was playing on a great offense or in a great offensive system, but he and that offensive line for Alabama A&M was the most consistent thing this year. I mean, I tell you what, if Alabama State, that's on my Christmas wish list. We should come up with a Christmas wish list, AD. Mine, I'm telling you now, mine is to get Alabama A&M some defensive help. That is on my Christmas wish list for Alabama A&M, because there's no reason why they should not have been playing in this SWAC championship game this past year. Their offense is so exciting, and, oh, man, it's tough. But anyway, that's how it rolls sometimes. All right, let's get ready to move on and wrap up this podcast with the second edition of Drew's Dimes. Drew's Dimes delves into the world of black college basketball, where we get into talking about all the happenings going on in the GCAC, the SIAC, CIAA, NEAC, and the SWAC, as well as the happenings going on with Tennessee State, Hampton, and anybody else that's floating around as an independent school outside of those major 5 conferences. So, AD, what's the headlines that we got for Drew's Dimes? And, of course, all of these Drew's Dimes will be featured on mybcsn.net on Monday. So, what do you got?
Yeah. Hey. GFL. Legion.
All right, Brian. Here we go with the Drew's Dimes, and we're just gonna get the highlights of these. Roger Ray becomes the all-time leading scorer at Livingstone University in their victory over Virginia State earlier this week. So kudos to Roger Ray for becoming the all-time leading scorer at Livingstone University. CIAA has 3 women's teams ranked in the Atlantic region top 5 in basketball. So once again, kudos to the CIAA for the women's teams being ranked.
Can I make a mention of who those teams are for anyone who might wonder?
Go ahead with that, Brian.
Yeah, you got Virginia Union coming in at number 2, Bowie State coming in at number 4, and Lincoln coming in at number 5. That is right. From the women's region.
All right. Central State, Quentin Gillespie scored a career-high 22 points as Central State cruised to an 85-68 road victory over Savannah State this past week. That victory improved Central State to 4-2 overall and 1-0 in the SIAC. So kudos to Mr. Gillespie right there. Brian, my next time. Fayetteville State off to an 8-0 start, Brian. They're off to an 8-0 start. Bowie State's women off to a 7-0 start in the CIAA. Here's one for you though, Brian. No SWAC team, men or women's, or MEAC men's team entering into the second week of December is over 500. Grambling leads the SWAC. Grambling men lead the SWAC at 4-4. Bethune men lead the MEAC at 5-5. And on the women's side, Alabama State and Texas Southern had the best winning percentage among the women in the SWAC conference at 3-4. So, and if you talk about most victories, Alcorn women had the most victories. They have 4 victories there, Brian. Talking about rankings, Brian, Virginia, there are no men's teams ranked in Division II basketball, Brian. No HBCU men's teams are ranked. And in the Women's Association of Basketball Coaches, Virginia Union comes in at number 10 and at number 12 in the D2 SIDs polls. So that's just a couple of different polls that you got out there. Coppin State's men beat East Carolina. You know, anytime our HBCUs beat another we call them FCS schools in football, but one of the what do we call those schools, Brian, in basketball? What would you classify as East Carolina in basketball, Brian?
I don't know. At that point, I think we may just have to go to PWIs or Power 5. Well, they're not even a Power 5.
Power
so
5,
I guess we just have to say PWIs or D1 PWIs.
They would be Group of 5 in football, but I don't know what we call them in basketball. But anyway, you know, it's still East Carolina is still not one of our traditional HBCUs. They beat a PWI. And on the women's side, let's talk about taking down PWIs. Howard's women took down Fairleigh Dickinson this past week. And that was by a score of 64-56, Brian. So, you know, we've got a couple of our teams that are out here doing great things. And my last dime, Brian, the travesty that's going on in Jacksonville, Florida. No, I'm not talking about Jacksonville University getting rid of their football program, Brian. What I am talking about is the 11-0 Edward Waters Ladies Tigers not being ranked in NAIA. The only women's team that is ranked is Talladega at number 9. They come in at 10-2. Edward Waters unranked at 11-0. Only other HBCU receiving votes on the women's side is Philander Smith. So the new NAIA men's poll will be out later on this week, Brian. So we'll address that in our show for next week. Those are my 10 points in reference to HBCU basketball, or as what we like to affectionately call around here, Drew's Dimes.
You know, I thought you were gonna, when you were talking about the travesty out of Jacksonville, I thought you were gonna mention something about the Jaguars, but you went to another football program that maybe the Jaguars should close shop in Jacksonville. But anyway, yeah, pretty crazy. And Edward Waters College, a women program, 11-0. That's a heck of a start. You know, actually. So it's just, I don't know what it is. Maybe by the next poll they'll start to get some recognition for what they're doing. The last thing I saw here that you sent was some stats on the D1 side. Ben Stanley, the 6'6" sophomore forward from Hampton, is averaging 20.9 points per game. with 4 double-doubles. I believe he is 24th in the country with that point-per-game average. And I guess I also should mention on the D2 side, Grayson Kelly, 6'1" junior guard from Shaw, is averaging 24.2. He's ranked 13th. And then there's also a young man, Terrell Leach, a 6-foot senior guard from Virginia Union, averaging 23.9. He's ranked 14th. So those two guys in the top 20 in scoring averages, a few other guys behind them. Actually, I should mention Glenn Abram, a 6'1" junior guard for West Virginia State, is averaging 22.3 points per game. So those are the only 3 guys averaging over 20 per game. So, yeah, props to those. And yeah, I'll make sure we get those Drew's Dimes up a little bit later, and you guys can follow along by Tuesday on those. All right, AD. Well, I think we've kind of hit the wall, and that'll do it for this show. We have really at this point postseason stuff. I should mention this week will be the announcement, the finalists of the by FCS of the Walter Payton Award, the hold on, I want to make sure I get it right here because it's the announcements that are coming out later this week. Okay, so upcoming this week, you have the Walter Payton Award, which is the overall player. That's going to be announced on Monday. Matter of fact, so sometime as you're listening to this for the first time, when this gets dropped on Monday, that announcement will be made. The Buck Buchanan Award invites get announced on Tuesday the 10th. The Jerry Rice Award winner, I believe that is for the newcomer or freshman of the year. That is on December 11th. The Eddie Robinson Coach of the Year is on December 12th. Then they do the Doris Robinson Award. I have no idea what that is, I'll be honest. And then on the 19th, they have the FCS All-America team. So that'll be announced on the 19th. So, again, if you want to keep up with any of that, go to @FCS_stats. And as we get it, we'll definitely be making sure to post it. But I just thought I'd give the source in case you want to go there first. All right. Any final words, Drew? I think we've got it all covered this time.
The All-Star game that nobody saw today, Brian.
Yes.
Because it was played and broadcast on Flow Sports.
Yeah, what we're talking about, AD is talking about, is the FCS Bowl, the 6th annual Spiral FCS Bowl. Was played in Spec Martin Stadium in DeLand. I did read that Jimmy Robinson was an MVP. It's kind of funny. This is the same bowl that the quarterback of the Steelers, Devlin Duck Hodges, he played in this bowl game maybe a year or two ago, because I'm just reading a tweet from somebody that says Devlin Hodges wasn't good enough for the Senior Bowl. Devlin Hodges wasn't good enough for the Shrine Bowl, for the NFLPA Bowl. He was good enough for the Tropical Bowl USA. He was good enough to start and steady a team in turmoil as a rookie. And so the Spiral Tropical Bowl is one of the bowls sponsored by the same people who put together this bowl, this FCS National Bowl. So those guys, and I believe Jimmy Robinson of Bethune-Cookman, I think what I was saying, was awarded one of the most valuable player awards. And, of course, that means it probably had to do with his tremendous work in the punt return field. So I'll see if I can find out and track some more of that information. But that's about it. So I think that will do it for AD and I for this week. Remember, on Twitter, find us at MyBCSN1. Find Drew at BCSN, Drew, D-R-E-W. Find me at DRB365. Take a look at us on the web and on Facebook. And that's going to conclude it for week number 15. It's sad that the regular season has come to the end for football. It's been an amazing 3-4 months, but we're going to slowly begin to turn the page to football as the holidays approach. So for AD Drew, I'm Brian Fulford. Thank you for watching and listening. Please share the show with 2 friends. Tell them about us, and this thing will continue to grow. And remember, make sure to let the world know that the Celebration Bowl is a real bowl. It is part of the Football Bowl Association and should receive the same kind of press recognition and listing as the other 40 bowls that will be taking place in the month of December and January. Thank you for listening. God bless. Take care. We will see you soon.
Hello.
This December 21st, the best in HBCU football will collide in Atlanta at the Celebration Bowl. MEAC versus SWAC. Champion versus champion. Only one team will rise above the rest and claim the coveted Celebration Bowl trophy. Come join the celebration at Mercedes-Benz Stadium this December. For more information, visit thecelebrationbowl.com.
But you stay hard.